Next on our agenda is an update from our student board member, Mr. Hurd.
Thank you and good afternoon. At our last board meeting, Tanae Kidd, Jason Wu, and I had the pleasure of presenting a student member voting rights proposal to this board. We thank you for the time you gave us and your consideration of our proposal. As a result of the board meeting, it was decided that more discussion was needed and a work session was held on November 23rd to further discuss the student member voting rights proposal. At the meeting, the student member on the Montgomery County Board of Education, Nick Asante, the student member on the Anne Arundel County Board of Education, Drake Smith, and I had the privilege of further elaborating on the proposal and explaining why student representation is so vital to our decision-making process. We were disappointed that the board chose to vote against student member voting rights, but we still thank board members who gave constructive criticism. However, I feel obligated as the student representative on this board to call into question some of the rhetoric that was used during the work session. During discussion on the proposal, leadership of this board stated that students are a special interest group. Students are the reason this institution exists. I know as a student, if I were to ask nearly any of my teachers why they teach, it wouldn't be the salary, it wouldn't be the summers off, it would be the students they wake up every morning to see. I was taken aback when I heard those remarks, and I know I speak for our students when I ask that this board reevaluate the role they believe students fill in this institution and who our deliberative process is meant to serve. As our community moves forward and progresses towards the end of 2020, one thing is clear. Our school resource officer program is going to remain a central point of discussion. 2 months ago, a presentation was delivered to this board detailing our SRO program. It was asked what the student perspective was, and I stated the student community is yearning for a forum, an opportunity to share their experiences with you. I am still hopeful that this board will consider hosting a public forum regarding our SRO program to allow for the meaningful discussion this topic deserves. Students are eager to be welcomed into the discussion as stakeholders and are more than ready to provide personal testimony for this board to evaluate. I am also excited to inform this board and our community that students will be hosting a forum to discuss our school resource officer program on December 9th at 5 p.m. I encourage board members and all interested community members to attend. The meeting information is available at events.ccboesmob.com. events.ccboesmob.com. This will be my last report in 2020. I hope that our staff and students have a cheerful holiday break, a safe and exciting New Year's, and come back with a renewed spirit. We made it to the end of 2020, and with that in mind, our administrators, teachers, support staff, and all CCPS employees deserve an enormous thanks and appreciation for their relentless service to teaching and learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
So just to be clear, what's being asked of us is for the first quarter only at this point. And during that first quarter, anyone that has received below a 50 will receive a 50. It's still a failing grade. We're still using a traditional grading system. And that's all that's being asked of us, correct?
Yeah, Mr. Hancock, that's a good summary. That is all we're asking. And you bring up a very good point, because just suspending this policy and giving students a 50 is not going to solve the problem. We have to look at what we can do now to add more support so that we're not in a worse situation at the end of the second quarter.
Thank you. And I think it is a good idea. And just to let people know, in the past, for completely different reasons, I have advocated against something similar to this, but under completely different circumstances. Of course, we have students now that a lot of this is no fault of their own. They can't control the situations around them. So I am looking at this completely different. Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I would like to ask our student board member his thoughts on this, being as he is a student who really excels. I would like to know his how Mr. Hurd feels about this.
Certainly, Mr. Hurd.
Yeah, I think this proposal is a necessity, and I think we have an obligation as a board to make decisions with compassion. And I'm glad that staff have brought forward a position for us to vote on that's not only compassionate, but rational and reasonable. This isn't an extreme, and I feel like it's only going to benefit everyone involved, and that no one's going to be getting the short end of the stick or being put at a disservice. And I think especially by keeping the traditional grading system, we're encouraging teachers to continue what they're doing, but we're also not going to punish students throughout their entire year. As Ms. Holstein was saying, this can negatively prevent them from passing that class for the rest of the year. We are going to allow them essentially future opportunities to fix that. And I think we can all agree that although we're confident with where first quarter stands now and where the future stands now, we all know that at the beginning there was turbulence. And I think we can't fault any student for that. And that, like I said earlier, this is a compassionate move that's needed.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Holstein.
Sure.
Thanks, Mr. Hancock.
I would just like to thank my colleagues for their excellent clarifying questions and comments thus far. Just to be thinking ahead, though, it's almost interim time. Do you have any data yet as to what the trend is regarding failures for the second quarter?
So
based on that interim information?
I don't have numbers yet, but I talk to principals every single week because we have a weekly principals meeting. And they have written in their plans for their goals for the year to address the number of students that were failing and to put extra supports in place. So looking at their plans this week, I know that we will see better success in the second quarter than we did in the first quarter. And just by having access and the hotspots, and now everyone having the laptop that they need, that right there is going to solve a lot of the problem. But I am worried about certain groups of students that have language barriers, that have special needs, that until we get them back in the building, that this is going to be a challenge. But I'm hopeful with everything that we have in place that second quarter is going to look better. I want to reiterate, though, to our parents, if you're seeing that your children are not behaving like they normally do and they are very stressed, please reach out to the school or reach out to us. Last week, we had a case of a straight A student who was contemplating suicide because they were getting D's. And the family reached out to us and we've provided the support to that family. We cannot lose children over stress, over grades. So please watch your children and make sure that you're reaching out to us. We have lots of help if we know.
I just want to add as well, thank you very much for the very comprehensive presentation, because I think it brings to mind for all of us the balance between the grades and mental health. And I think we're aware of it, but we need to be reminded of it. And one thing that you didn't say during your presentation that struck a chord with me is that we need to give children hope. We don't want to lose any of our children because they had a not very successful first quarter. I personally think that this would give students hope to continue to strive to get better and improve their grades. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Ms. McGraw.
Are there any other comments? Mr. Hurd, and then Ms. Wilson.
Thank you. Throughout both the grading presentation, but also, the dual mental health part of the presentation, there was references to boundaries and workload. So my question would just be, what boundaries are being put in place? Because like you say, and like we've mentioned in past board meetings, teachers want to do the right thing, but sometimes that outlet is done in the wrong ways and it negatively affects students. So what ways are we being proactive about setting those boundaries?
So the best way that we know of right now is to continue with extensive training for our teachers. And that happens every Wednesday because of the schedule that we have with asynchronous learning. We're able to do that. But I want to make sure that our community knows that if your child is having a significant problem in one of their classes, they need to reach out to the teacher first and talk about it. I talked to a mom today that the problem is already solved because we scheduled a parent conference. Let the teacher know that there's a significant difficulty there with workload. And then if it's not solved at that level, reach out to administrators. Principals and vice principals are key to helping students make sure that they're successful. So we can't just say this is the way it is. I think at this point, we all know that workload is an issue. We need to really start working at the teacher level and address the specific concerns that a family is having. The other piece is I'm working with all of our principals right now, and they're writing recommendations that we do have a homework policy, but we're looking at providing some additional guidance because in this virtual setting, that policy is not working as well as we need it to. So we're going to look at making recommendations, and also a reminder to all of our teachers. Wednesday is a catch-up day. That's how it was designed. There should not be any new learning assigned on Wednesdays. And I'm hearing from families that Wednesday is becoming the most difficult day of the week for students. So we will keep working on our side to make this better so that students aren't just completely overwhelmed where they're shutting down.
Ms. McGraw? Can I further comment on that?
Right ahead, Mr. Hurd.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so you mentioned the boundaries, and I'm glad to hear that there's teacher workshops and there's opportunities for students to reach out. But I know personally in my classes and many other students' classes, I've heard that Wednesdays are definitely not a catch-up day. And I know personally, tomorrow, Wednesday, I'm not going to be catching up on my work. I'm going to be doing my Wednesday work assignments. And that's not just one teacher. It's not an outlier. That's the vast majority of my teachers. And I'm seeing the liaisons nodding their heads in agreement. So I really hope that something is proactively done about that. So that way it's not taking students having to accelerate this and bring it to the attention of a principal or administrator, where disciplinary action or remedial action is being taken against these teachers. I think it just needs to be understood. So I hope that that's addressed.
We hear you, Ian. We all will keep working with our schools to make this happen because that's how it was designed. And I hear you. I hear it from others all the time that Wednesdays is not how we designed it to be. So we will keep working. I promise you that.
Okay. Did I see Ms. Wilson's hand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you
And
hear
then
me?
Ms. Walker?
I just wanted
Yes. And then
to
Ms.
go
Walker.
back to the summer program consideration. And of course, that's going to take funding of some degree. And I would be very interested to hear as you solidify the plan and associated costs. I hope Laughlin is on the call because she extended an invitation for the next legislative breakfast or luncheon. And this is certainly something to illustrate to our legislators why we need funding, because COVID recovery is going to be of utmost importance. I mean, the learning consequences is going to be significant, and we need to have a plan in place uh, going forward. And so I'm sure, Dr. Hill, you and your staff are going to keep us posted of the plan, but most importantly, we have to take advantage of when we have an opportunity, if our legislators are willing to listen, that these are things that we need to be conscious of going forward into the future, as well as considerations for our teachers and helping them recover from COVID. Because it's, it's a lot to process. The other point that I wanted to make, and I know the staff will keep us posted, is our high school seniors, and just keeping us um, informed as far as everyone meeting their requirements and being on time with graduation requirements. You covered quite a bit of resources and support opportunities, but particularly our high school seniors, we need to kind of really stay on top of making sure that we don't lower the standard, but we certainly make sure, given COVID conditions, that is followed. And not to put you on the spot, but I'm imagining that the high school senior class is around 2,000 seniors. So it would be nice to kind of to center in on those that are facing many challenges, and also offer to the parents that if you feel like you're not getting that support, that who to call to help your students uh, succeed. I think it can't be emphasized enough.
So the high school seniors are one of our top priorities. We know exactly in each school which seniors right now are not on track to graduate. We're assigning them mentors, we're assigning them additional support. But as you say, Ms. Wilson, we also need the students because, it is going to take them work to pass. And unfortunately, you can't graduate if you're not willing to put the work in. So although we're offering all of these supports and all of these programs, and we realize this is unprecedented time in education, we need our students to show up too. So we can't have kids logging in for 5 minutes and then jumping off. We need that commitment from kids. We'll be there with you. We'll walk with you, but you have to walk with us. We need attendance to improve. Kids need to be logging in and participating. We need those cameras on. So it's very hard to teach, and it's very hard to have this kind of conversation when I can't see you. So you bring up a good point that we have a lot in place, but walk with us. We can't walk you across the stage unless you're willing to do the work.
Thank you. Ms. Walker, I saw your hand. You're muted.
Is this working? Okay. I wanted to comment on the Wednesday work, which Ian kind of summarized my ideas about that. Some of my teachers since the beginning of the school year have felt obligated to give work on Wednesday. So they told me since the beginning, they were like, well, we have to give you work. And so every Wednesday, my teachers, all of them would email me and they would say, here's your assignment for today. It is due by tonight. And so Wednesdays became harder than the days you had to go to school because you got more work and you have to do it all on your own. And also, I would like to make a comment on the workload, because the workload has increased immensely this year. But I also think it's very hard to cut back on the workload because we spend so many less hours with our teacher. The teachers are trying to find new ways for us to learn content. And so I think that to some degree, it is to the benefit of the student to have more work, especially in like advanced placement courses, because that test, the curriculum for the test is moving way faster than we can in virtual school. And so I think the workload is trying to compensate for what little time we now have in the classroom.
Your points are so well taken, Christina, because our AP courses are moving at such a quick pace. And if we want students to pass that AP exam, that is going to be a challenge. And you're right. In a virtual setting, you are seeing your teachers less. So there has to be some increase in workload. We just can't make it so overwhelming that students can't complete the work, because they also need to eat and sleep and have some time away from school so that they're healthy. But I'm going to clarify again that for Wednesday to count as a school day, it has to be an asynchronous day. So students have to be working, but what they should be doing is they should be finishing up work from Monday and Tuesday, or working on a long-term project. There is no expectation that for it to count as a school day, that a teacher needs to make a new assignment. So I will reiterate it again today in my update that will go to all teachers.
Thank you. The next item of new business is the suspension of the grading policy. And can we just, Mr. Swartz, can we just go right?
Sure, I'll mention that this is a language in policy 5132.2. We're not suspending the whole policy, of course, just the provision dealing with the minimum grades that we talked about earlier in the meeting.
Okay. I need a motion.
Motion to accept the proposed amendment.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't say who seconded.
Liz Brown.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to suspend the grading policy for the first quarter. Mrs. Abel.
We need discussion, please.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please excuse me. Mrs. Abel, I saw your hand.
We don't have anything in writing about what is being proposed.
Okay, so the correct me if I'm wrong. The proposal is to suspend the first quarter grading policy to allow the F to mean 50% during the first quarter. Is that correct? Okay. Discussion. No discussion? Thank you, Mrs. Abel, for correcting me. Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Ms. McGraw. So, Ms. Holstein, I don't know if you have any numbers, but let me preface it by this comment first. You know, this is something that the board looked at. I guess it was about a year and a half ago or so, when it was the practice to not give any lower than a 50%, and we took a vote on that, and there was a lot of discussion because some kids try and they still don't make it, and I don't know if there's a way to draw a distinction between kids that are trying and still not getting things done. When you have a kid that doesn't log in, when they're able to log in, they don't do anything. It just seems to me that if they're just blowing it off because they can, I just think there needs, if we can, to get some distinction between kids who are legitimately giving an effort, and if they can't get on, that's a completely different story, right? I mean, if they don't have access, that's a completely different story. But I don't know if you have any. You did mention the groups before that were getting those Fs, and I don't know. I just throw that out as discussion for my fellow board members and for you to make any comment.
So the children that have the ability to log in and are still doing poorly, we can't bring, I can't define that as one reason why they're doing poorly. In this current situation, there are multiple reasons why kids can log on and are still not finding success. All the way down to just how kids learn. There are children that just are struggling because much of the instruction is verbal. And so there really is no way to just define as I just do, this specific student just doesn't want to do it. But what we need to do is to go ahead and give them the F and give them the 50. But then folks like Crystal Benson and Charmaine Young Waddy, they are so active with kids that are failing, and that's where the outreach goes, and that's where we're scheduling attendance conferences and putting plans in place for kids, because we have to drill down to why and then support them. And then unfortunately, we all know that there will be children that no matter what we do, that they unfortunately are going to fail this year. But for this first quarter, I really believe that we can't put a blanket statement out there that there are kids who just don't want to. It is just multifaceted, and I understand when we did this before that was really a concern for the board, and that's why you decided not to do that. But this is a different situation, and we're not asking for the policy to be changed. We're just asking for the first quarter, and give us some time to work with these kids.
Thank you. And just so I'm sorry, just to follow up what you said. And so if, as Ms. Holstein said, this would just be for the first quarter, and if we would have to revisit this again, if something similar were to happen or to be considered for the second quarter. Is that true?
Yes, and if that happens, I will have numbers of students for you. I will have numbers of students that failed first quarter and second quarter, even with great amounts of support given to them. But this first quarter, there's too many factors.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I saw Mr. Hurd's hand and then Mr. Hancock.
I would agree with Ms. Holstein and just want to reiterate that I think in principle, it can sound like a good idea to want to draw that distinction, because obviously we only want students who are putting in good faith effort to get the grade. But what concerns me is in practice, I don't think that would be feasible. And I don't think our school system would be able to draw that line. And I think that if we force their hands into having to draw that line, we would leave out a lot of disparity. And when, one example was given, they have the ability to log in, but they don't. That's one technological example of them having the ability, but that doesn't account for at-home experiences and so many other factors that are in the everyday student's life. And that's why I would encourage this board to support this and to rule and err on the side of compassion, at least for first quarter, and giving those students a chance and a hope for a future. And this goes back to the point about mental health, showing our students that we are going to set the example for them, that first quarter might not have gone the way you wanted it to, but you're not done. You've got to get through the next three, and we're going to make it to the end of this.
Next on the agenda, future agenda item. Hi, Ms. Wilson, and then Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was hoping that our student board representative would be willing to give a presentation on his the student representative staff. when you sent out when you posted your notes, and I went back and I researched the event for Thursday, I believe, and discovered that you have quite an extensive staff to include a chief of staff, an outreach coordinator, a school safety consultant, a school climate and culture consultant, just to name a few. And I think it would be worthwhile if you were willing and able to do so, to give an overview. And for example, I would be interested, like your outreach coordinator, what planned events do you have in the coming year, or ideas to get students engaged? Um, the school safety consultant, their identification of any safety or risk concerns in the schools. Clarification on positive and negative sources of school culture. Um,
Mhm.
any identifying needs unique to students enrolled in extracurriculum activities. So I think I kind of gave you a good idea of some of the things that I think would be worthwhile to share overall with your fellow board members. And I think it would be very insightful and beneficial.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, and it's something I haven't gone over too extensively in the boardroom. I know I did advertise in the boardroom the application process, and I've alluded to it here and there, but I'd be more than happy to go through the positions, and even if you would like, I can have those staff members come and be there at the presentation, especially if it's a digital one, come January. But if you wouldn't mind, I would also want to plug that, and you referenced future events and year-long events. We always post our events on events.ccboesmob.com. And if you're ever interested, or you're ever wondering, hey, what are we doing? You can always go there, but we'll certainly prepare a presentation if that's the will of the board.
Thank you,
The
Madam
consensus
Chair.
of the board to have such a presentation, just raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. I see a consensus. All right. We'll put that as a future agenda item and let you know, Mr. Hurd, what month to be prepared. All right. Mr. Hancock, I saw your hand for a future agenda item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back to the student board member. Ian had mentioned early on his desire to have a student forum in regards to SROs. I think that's a good idea. As a supporter myself of SROs, I want to know what the students' feelings are, and wherever we can make improvements. If we don't hold the forums, if we don't interact with the students, then we'll never know. So I think that would be a good thing to plan, whether we put it on an agenda or begin the planning phase. I think it's a great idea. So thank you.
Don't